Welcome to the second season of the Sip of Sunshine podcast from Sunshine Support. I'll be your host this season. I'm Chrissa, the founder, and we're really looking forward to getting into some new topics, new discussions, and also having some fun on the podcast as well. We hope you enjoy. So, what I thought we'd do is just introduce ourselves a little bit, because we're going to be talking today about the return to school. And I think it would be really good for us to chat about things from a parent point of view, a teacher point of view, and the child point of view. Because I think one of the things that we find quite a lot in the work that we do is that there's always a conflict between those three things. And there's only ever one voice shouting loudly, not considering the others. But we need all three voices to make it work. So would you like to introduce yourselves?
Yes, so my name's Jess. I am a legal advisor here at Sunshine Support. I've been here for about 18 months now, and I'm really excited to be here today to discuss this because it's something really sort of important to me personally at the moment, actually.
Fabulous. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? We've all got that lived experience that we're bringing with us as well.
Yes.
So, and hello, welcome back, Lindsay.
Hi, I'm Lindsay, and I'm an advocate with Sunshine Support, and I also lead the Sunshine for Schools offer for the team. I have been a teacher before I became an advocate, and I was teaching for 26 years, and I was a head teacher for the last 10 of those years. I've been with Sunshine for about 7 months now.
You know, you don't look old enough to be teaching for that long, Lindsay.
I am.
It baffles me. It baffles me. But I know, because I know that we like to talk about how we all sort of came to be. And Lindsay actually taught all four of my children. So and that's why she's here, because she's one of the best.
I'm really old.
That's why I'm really old. I was sort of saying to somebody this morning, they was like, "Oh, you know, how long have you been a SEND parent?" And I was like, over 2 decades. So yeah, I feel really old, really old. But we were also saying this morning, weren't we, how quickly time goes as a parent? Because Jess, it felt like yesterday when you had a baby.
I know.
And how old is she now?
15 months, walking and talking. I know.
It just goes so fast, doesn't it? It won't be long before she's in school.
Oh, don't. Terrifying. I know. I remember when she came to our first away day, and I was sat with her on my lap in my lounge.
Yeah.
She's there.
She's always been a sunshine baby.
She has. Bless her.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So, you know,
and my baby's 16.
Oh, yeah, not such a baby.
And bigger than me.
But that goes so fast, doesn't it? I know that we're talking like months with the baby, but it is a little bit blink and you miss it, isn't it? Even with the big ones.
Yeah.
The return to school. What I'm going to love about our chat today is that I think all of us have very different experiences with the return to school. And I'm sure that we probably will draw on our own experiences of returning to school back in the day, or not that long ago, when we were in school. And one of the things we've spoken about on previous podcasts is how there is a link between us as parents and teachers as well, and the children, because the children pick up on what we're feeling, even if we're not saying it. It's that vibe in the room, isn't it? That you always, you know, when people say they walk into a room and they can feel tension, you can feel it. It's a strange thing. You can't put your finger on it. So I was wondering, what do you both think then are, you know, the reasons for children finding it quite difficult on this particular return to school after Christmas?
I think the hype of Christmas really sort of impacts going back. I think you've had so much excitement. You know, you get all your new presents, you get to see family. Let's be honest, you can eat chocolate for breakfast.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you very quickly having to switch back into, I've got to be up, dressed, breakfast, out in the cold as well. Like, who wants to go out in the cold and the rain at 8 a.m. to go to school?
And those routines go out the window, don't they?
So quickly.
Yeah, chocolate for breakfast. I mean, I think even the adults can honestly admit that our food routines go out the window, don't they?
Definitely.
And,
And
and I think to build on that, they've also been through a period of time where school before the holiday was out of routine as
yeah,
well.
Yeah.
So that sort of exhaustion of Christmas, holidays really are around recouping some energy and being ready for the next phase. But actually, school is exhausting on the run up to Christmas, and
yeah.
Christmas is so busy and exhausting that you've probably not got the same time to relax that you do at other school holidays.
Yeah, and I think, the time of year, it makes us all want to hibernate a bit. I can't get my kids up at the minute. I start to wake them up and their alarms go off about 7 o'clock in the morning. And then one of them, it was about 20 past 8 yesterday that I eventually got her up, and she was absolutely fuming with me. She's like, "Why are you disturbing my sleep?" I said, "Because you've got to go to school and we've got like 10 minutes to now get ready, get your breakfast. It's not going to happen. I just need to get you out the door. I'll send you with everything that you need." And she's like, "This is such an inconvenience." I was like, "Mate, I get it. I get it. I completely agree. It's an inconvenience." But I think we're naturally, because it's so dark and it's so cold, like you say, and this morning was raining as well here,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, you just don't want to leave the house. You don't want to get up. But on the weekends, what are your kids like? Do they get up early?
Oh no, 10:30.
Oh, really? You've got teenagers already, Jess, and they're only
Yeah.
little.
Yeah, like he will get up and sort of lounge about in bed, and he is tablet mad.
Yeah.
If you see him, he's got a tablet glued to his hand, and he'll be in bed till 10, 10:30 playing games. And I have to go
Wow.
and remind him, we need to eat breakfast.
Yeah.
We need to get up. And he's like, okay. So he's like totally different
How is yours,
on the
Lindsay?
weekends. He will
With
get up on the school days, just
a bit lazy on the weekends. I love that. How's yours? Because you've got a teenager, so that should be a different ball game.
Yeah, and it is astounding how that need for sleep sort of hits you so quickly. You go from that really early mornings, even at the
Yeah.
weekend when you don't really want to be up yourselves as parents, and then all of a sudden they can just sleep and sleep and sleep. So my 16-year-old, he well, he could be in bed till early afternoon, but then he's really frustrated if that happens, because he also knows that he's lost part of the day, so he's quite sensible. He does ask, will you get me up at 10? I don't want to sleep till
Oh,
lunchtime. But it's phenomenal that it just happens to them. So I'm totally on board with it. It must be hormonal, developmental, because
yeah.
it's definitely different.
It is, isn't it? And I don't know. I mean, I get that now. If I have a lie in, I feel immense guilt that I could have done something in that time. I mean, me and your son do have something in common because we are neurodivergent. So it might be that we're just like, oh no, this time then I could have been active. My brain needs to work. But I feel like that having a nap in the afternoon. Anyway, I've completely digressed in the usual Chrissa way. But I suppose though, you know, the reasons that children find it difficult to go to school will probably be the same as why the adults do as well. I mean, Lindsay, do you remember the return to school after Christmas when you were a teacher? What was it like?
Well, I think it's exactly the same as what I've said for the children. You've been through the autumn term is always the longest term in education. It can feel a really long slog up until Christmas, because the weather changes. Like you said, it is more difficult to get up in the mornings.
Yeah.
The nights draw in, and and when you've worked a long school day, you're going home in the dark, you're arriving at school in the dark,
Yeah.
and then you have this crazy period of being sort of off curriculum, off timetable, having to fit in parents' evenings, Christmas shows, Christmas parties, special events for for the end of term. So you're busy anyway. You then go into a period of time where you're busy for really nice reasons. Not,
Yeah.
the school stuff's really nice as well, but you want to spend time with your family.
Yeah.
You want to be with your children. You want to be more present at home. So that the whole period of time is extremely busy, and actually you probably are going back in January not feeling as rested as you do on some other occasions.
Yeah.
Because you're investing.
I was talking to Kelly Jarvis about this, and obviously she used to work in a school, and some of my family members and close friends are teachers as well, and they've always said that you get this sort of thing with a teacher where you sort of work towards that break, and then when you get the break, you fall unwell because you've burnt yourself out. And that seems to be a common thing, because I don't know anybody who was healthy over this Christmas. Everybody seems to have come down with something.
Yeah, our entire house was infected for the whole of Christmas.
So it's not been an
awful.
enjoyable break.
No, not at all.
So that's really frustrating. So of course
definitely a factor, I think, as well, and it for some teaching staff, that's their experience of nearly every school holiday is exhaustion during term time, and then being unwell in the school holidays, and then feeling frustrated about possibly not even really being well enough to go back to school, but then you have to because you've been on holiday, so you should be well.
Yeah, that's frustrating. And there is that, that we joke about it if you're not in the sector, and you sort of say, oh, all those holidays, but there isn't really the sort of balance during term time. I think one of the things, for instance, we've got as sort of non-school organisations is that we can strike that balance every week. We can work towards making sure that we're looking after our well-being and stuff, but it's so intense and such long hours, because it's not 9 till 3 or 9 till 3:30. I know the hours that teachers work, and it's absolutely not feasible in order to be able to do a full-time job in those hours, because it's more than a full-time job. So then it's sort of intense, hard and fast, and then recovery. Intense, hard and fast, then recovery. And then you sort of think, well, if that's how the teachers are being treated and the way that they're having to work, and that there's not an awful lot of leeway, as you know, Lindsay, because you're somebody who's always promoted well-being within your staff. But if that's something that, you can't achieve that wellness for the people at the top, then it's no wonder the kids are struggling, because the enthusiasm just isn't there from the teachers, is it? That like it used to be years ago, when there was money and people to be able to teach. So it must be really, really hard. So I think as well, I don't know whether there's like that extra connection over Christmas. During the school holidays over the 6 weeks, parents find childcare for their kids, don't they? They still have to work. You might take a couple of weeks off to go on holiday or whatever, or take a break. But essentially, the majority of the time, the kids are still either being juggled around your work, or they're off to relatives, or they go into a holiday club. But over Christmas, people tend to not do that. They tend to just book the time off and spend the time with the kids. So I suppose it must be quite hard for them to go back and separate, particularly the kids with anxiety.
I think that was definitely something my little boy struggles with. Obviously, working at home, every holiday is sort of like that for him. He has me at home, and he gets that sort of security blanket almost of, I know mum's here. And Christmas, he was very sort of attached, and we did so much stuff together. So I think when it did come back to going into school again, I definitely saw a shift in how he was responding, and sort of the anxiety that built, which was expected. I wasn't sort of going into it blinkered thinking everything would work okay. But yeah, it was definitely hard this time round.
It is hard. Is there anything then that sort of makes it easier for him? Anything that you've picked up along the way, given, he is, how old is he? 7? 7.
Yeah.
So he's still very, very young. But is there anything like any particular strategies for the preparation that perhaps you do at home that work really well or perhaps don't work very well?
So I tend to find with him, particularly if we talk about it sort of in the days leading up, that makes it worse because
Okay.
it plays on his mind. He's very much a thinker.
Yeah.
So we try and create little steps in the morning. So it's not a long list of, I've got to do all these jobs and then I've got to go to school. It's, right, we'll have breakfast. And he gets to sit during his breakfast and have his downtime with his tablet,
Yeah.
watch what he wants to watch. And then we just do it really slowly. And then when we get in the car to go to school, he gets to pick the music that goes on.
Okay. That's good.
It always ends up being Queen, We Will Rock You. I'm sick of that song, but it helps him. And then we always make sure we meet his friend before we go into school. So that kind of gives a bit of a distraction almost. It doesn't always work, but yeah, we tend to find that sort of helps him just really calm, break down the morning, not overface him really.
Yeah, you've got to sort of just deprioritize what you're trying to do, I suppose, in order to not heighten that anxiety. Yeah, I totally get that. Is there anything that you found, Lindsay, because you're far more seasoned with your son being so old? Is there anything that you used to find work? So I mean, he's in college now. So is there anything there that perhaps makes him anxious, and you have to still maintain now that he's there?
Well, I think, you know, that building on what Jess said, that idea of reconnecting, I think, is really important. And you know, for Finley, he likes to stay connected with his friends, and I think that sort of interaction, you know, whilst it might sort of drift off during a school holiday, it seems to build again just on that sort of return to school. And that's, you know, for him, you know, as a teenager, he's putting that strategy in place for himself. I'm not having to support him with it. He knows that he likes to reconnect with his friends, because then when he gets back into college, he doesn't feel anxious. He sort of knows what they've been up to. He knows he's already shared what he's been doing during his holidays, and they can sort of hit the ground running, I suppose, with each other.
That's nice. Oh, that's really nice. One of mine used to struggle every day going into school because it was a transition. I don't think it was necessarily school that was the problem, but she's always been a bit of a free spirit. We've seen her on Facebook Lives. We know which one I'm talking about. She's always been quite a free spirit, and she used to really struggle. And Lindsay was a head teacher at the time, and I remember one particular day, Lindsay rang me and said, "Look, she's in the school. There's no way she can get out of the school, but we can't find her." And she'd wrapped herself. I don't know whether you remember this, Lindsay. She'd wrapped herself in a
I know where she
tyre.
was.
And she used to do this so she didn't have to do the transition. She wanted to remain outside. And she did a lot of her learning in that reception year outside, and she really loved it. She never had trouble going to school. It was the sort of boundary of going into the classroom. And I think it's quite important for people, parents and teachers really, to recognise what the barrier is, because is it the actual school in its entirety? Because, you know, there's something we can work on there. Is it the classroom? Is it the teacher? Is it the activities? Or could it just be that threshold? And for her, it was the threshold. And so we worked together. Fortunately, my mother-in-law is also a highly experienced specialist teacher. And so we worked with the school, and she gave us some strategies as well. And we used like a transition object. So she would play with something at home, and it's usually at that age. She loved animals. So it was all like farm animals. And on the weekend, we'd take her to get another animal to add to the collection. So Monday then was all about focusing on the animal, talking to her as she walked up the ramp into the classroom, over the threshold. Okay, we're great, we're in. And then it's like, oh, look, Mrs. Whoever, Ridley's got a giraffe today. And she'd be like, oh, knowing exactly what we're doing. Ridley, I've been waiting all weekend to see this giraffe. How fantastic. Come and talk to me about it. And we're in. And then it was fine. And I think those transition objects can be really, really useful. And they don't have to be small things. It could be, it could be that the child has created some artwork or whatever. But
So what is school avoidance? Now, a lot of people call this school refusal, and it's really important that we reframe how we look at this, because actually our children aren't refusing to attend school, they're actually unable to attend school. Now, if a child was...
It's a powerful letter with a peppy sound that pops up in some of our favourite words. As we continue our reading adventure, we'll discover how the letter P helps us describe all sorts of things. Get ready for a perfect and playful journey.
To get excellent outcomes for the young people with special educational needs and disabilities. And what this means is that I get to see lots of different graduated response.
Meet our neighbours in space, the planets of the solar system. We live on Earth, but we're part of a much bigger family. There are 8 planets that all orbit or travel around the sun. Let's start with the closest
How to teach our children and young people the skills they need to regulate their own behaviour, but in a way that really meets them where they are, rather than encouraging them to mask their behaviour so that the adults around them find them easier to manage. We hope you find this course super interesting and that you get lots out of it. So without further ado, let's go on to the first module.
I also think kids like to be told that they've done okay. So if they've created something at home, to take that into school and be quite like, oh, look what I've done on my own without a teacher present. I think teachers need to recognise that. I quite like the show and tell thing that schools have going on for that reason, because it helps with that sort of crossing that barrier, doesn't it?
Yeah, I've sort of found now with my little boy being sort of in junior years, they've sort of stopped doing things like that in the same way they did in sort of his infants. But he got a book for Christmas and he's mad on history. Never really knew until he started in juniors sort of the extent of it, but he became obsessed with the Romans because it was a unit they were covering at school. And then it moved on to the Anglo-Saxons, and he got books on both for Christmas. And as soon as term started, he was like, Mummy, I want to take my book in. Mummy, I want to show my teacher. She could use it in my history lesson. Thinking like his book could create their history class.
I love that.
And he took like 3 books into school just to show his teacher. But I think that's sort of having that one-on-one time with them as well, even just for a minute, where they feel like they've got the attention and they almost feel validated.
Yeah.
I think that really helps them.
Yeah.
And it certainly helped my little boy because he was having sort of a rough week.
Yeah.
So to have that was really nice for him. And I think that eased the anxiety a little bit. But it was about something he enjoyed, which was massive for him.
Yeah. It makes a
And I
big
think
difference.
It does, and I think that's why something's got to happen around teacher workload, around the way the curriculum is so intense and time pressured in classrooms, and the level of support and, you know, other people there as well, because the first thing that drops off, sadly, are those little interactions when you don't feel like you've got time for them, and they are so important and so meaningful to the young people that we work with. But you know, if you haven't got a teaching assistant and you know you've got to start the register because you've got to do English next, it's those that get sort of very, you know, very quickly lost within a busy classroom. But, you know, put another adult in there, find the resources so that every classroom has got a second adult. All of a sudden, the time pressure is eased. There's somebody there. If you can't do it as the teacher yourself, your teaching assistant can be the person who reconnects with the children and you know, looks at those things with them, makes them feel important and special. Because, you know, everybody thrives in an environment where they feel valued and they feel important, and when we don't have time for each other, that's what we're losing with young people.
Yeah. And I think, like you say, everybody wants to feel like they're part of a community. They're an important part of their class. And it's something we talk a lot about with regards to school climate. In order to feel connected, we need to get other things in place first. And part of that is the community and feeling like you're a valued member of that community. And that's a much bigger, discussion, I guess, about school community and how you feel important within that. That's something you absolutely nailed, actually, Lindsay, when you were ahead, because everybody was so we know that because it was an infant school, that was the beginning of our education journey with those parents, because our kids are all going to be in school together because of the catchment area till they're possibly 18. So you're going from age 4 to 18. This is a long time. So you did a lot to nurture those community relationships, just not the children, but inviting the siblings in. I remember my twins, which are my youngest batch out of my 4, they felt like part of that community before they started the school. So they knew the teachers' names. They knew what was expected of them. They knew the different areas of the playground. They didn't have to have transition days necessarily because, I appreciate that they are very important. But for my lot, they were already in. They were part of the community. So all that happened was that they started to put the school uniform on and they were like, ooh, look at me. And now Ridley, they're 10 now, my twins. Ridley looks back and she's like, why did you put me in the dress? It's so not cool. I said, well, at the time you were 4 and you were fine to go in a dress. She's mortified looking back at pictures. Why have I got pigtails in my hair? And as you know now, she's cut all her hair off. She will not be seen dead in a skirt. This is just not cool. It's all about looking like Spider-Man and Miles Morales. That is like the aim of life. But I think there's so much pressure placed on the adults, though, to get it right. And like you say, Lindsay, schools are underfunded, they're under-resourced. It would be wonderful. Imagine if we could have 2 TAs in every class at the beginning of every day and at a break. Wouldn't that be lovely? That would just be perfect. There's so many kids. You wouldn't expect a parent to have 30 kids in the house by themselves. They'd go mad. They'd want to have help. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't host a child's party with 30 kids by myself. That would be crazy. So I think there's a lot to do that we have to do as well on managing the expectations of adults. And I know there's not much more that we can do other than continue to campaign for sort of resources for schools, but also the anxiety of the parents, because the child feels anxious, the parent's very aware. The parent then feels anxious, which then makes the child more aware. So then the child is more anxious, and it's literally they're topping each other's anxiety up, and it's really hard to break them. By the time they get to that school gate, they're like a ball of anxiety, fiery anxiety. How do you deal with that, Lindsay? How do you deal with, a parent who's highly strung because they're really anxious because it's been a nightmare getting their kid to that point in the morning, and the child is like, no, I don't want to go in or whatever. Like, how do you deal with that, particularly at that age?
I suppose everybody's different, and that is different for each family when it happens to them. It's about validating how they're feeling, making sure that they know that they're not the only parent that feels like this way. That there are lots of anxieties around school about separating with your children, and that we can work through it.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing you can do is listen and not dismiss the way people are feeling. And I think, like you said, that's what I always tried to do in my school, is that we were there to listen and we could problem solve it together. And and just ask the question, well, how can we help? Because in the end, we are there to help. If you're feeling anxious, what will make you feel less anxious? What can we do? And that's going to be different depending on every situation. But open the conversation up is the biggest thing you can do.
So I thought I'd end the podcast with something a little bit different, and I thought I would ask you some funny questions. A bit sort of like quick fire, a bit quick fire. And they're not important things, they're just a bit fun. And I thought actually it will get us sort of thinking about when we were children. So both of you, and I don't mind who goes first or whether anybody wants to opt out. What's the one thing you used to forget to pack as a kid for school?
My funniest thing is underwear when I went swimming in junior school and I wore my swimming costume and then forgot to take any pants.
Oh, it's like one of those nightmares that you have, that is, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm still traumatized now. It's still the first thing that I thought of.
Oh, and I bet when you were packing for Finley, you know, and you're like, right, must remember to pack that for him because, you know, you don't want him to go through the same thing that I did.
Yeah.
What about you, Jess? Do you remember?
I think the worst one was probably I was in a school production and I had to have all my face painted and I forgot to take any makeup wipes to take this stuff off.
Oh,
There were none available and I had to walk home.
oh, God. Talk about walk of shame.
Luckily, it was an evening production, so there weren't many people sort of around, but still.
That's brilliant.
It wasn't a great look for me.
That's brilliant. I'm going to give you a next one, and I'll start this one off to give you some time to think, because I have a funny one. What's the strangest thing you've ever found in your child's book bag or school bag? I'll tell you mine. It was actually in her coat rather than a school bag. But one day, Remy, one of my twins, was walking out to school. It was when she was at your school, actually, Lindsay. And her teacher looked at me and said, and you know how they show them out the gate and they're like, you know, Joe, oh, there's your mum. Yeah, great. Remy, oh, there's your... And then she did a double take on Remy and she looked at me and she said, she didn't have that lipstick on a minute ago. And this is Remy all over. She'd packed a load of different makeup. She was only about 6, 5 maybe. She'd packed a load of makeup into a book bag and she got into the loos just before she came out to put it all on. It was hilarious. And it wasn't good. You know, it was like she'd gone like that with red lipstick. So what about you? What's the strangest thing you found?
I think the strangest thing is we sort of let my little boy have a bit more responsibility with packing his bag in the morning. Right. And he went through a phase of sort of toileting difficulties and he took one of his sister's nappies with him.
Oh.
He came home with the said nappy. It was still in the bag, like he didn't use it or anything. But I just looked at him, why did you take that? Just in case I had an accident, Mummy.
Oh, bless him.
It wouldn't fit you. She was only newborn. So he took this duddy nappy about this big. I was like, oh.
I love that. Oh, bless it. I would have loved to have seen him try and use it.
Oh, it'd been hilarious, wouldn't it?
Oh.
For me, it would always be a car. Toy cars were everywhere. Now it's just progressed to real cars, but yes, it would be a toy car.
See, and that's the point.
Pockets.
That's the point, you know, because a lot of teachers take these items off the kids, but actually he's going to forge a fantastic career in this, you know, so we shouldn't be stifling those creative moments. So the last quick fire question then is, if you could add one subject to the curriculum, what would that subject be? Because let's be fair, the curriculum is bland at the best of times. Oh, it's a good one.
Is in preference for
Not
me
very...
or for my child?
Well, either.
Okay, for me it'd be Harry Potter.
Oh, yeah.
All day, every day, because I'd ace that. I could have a degree in Harry Potter. Genuinely could. For Freddie, probably something more cooking related. He does none and he loves baking. He's mad on it. And he loves to learn to cook. And I think he would really do well with things like that. Very practical.
Yeah.
He likes weighing things out, all that sort of stuff. And he likes learning the science behind it all. So I think something like that would be really good for him.
Great lesson, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But they don't do
And
it
you bring it
because it's
home and I
easy,
could
is it?
eat it.
I had a flapjack
Really?
last night. Marnie
Ooh.
brought me a flapjack home. She's brought scones. She's brought all sorts of stuff. And yeah, she's learning now, but she's 13. So it would be
Freddie's
better
done
if that was.
salad. He made a salad,
Yeah.
and 70% of that salad was red kidney beans. It had a sprinkling of lettuce, a little bit of chicken, some croutons, and red kidney beans and some rice. And I said to him, "Do you even like kidney beans?" He's like, "Don't know. I'll give it a go."
Oh.
He had 3, and then no, I don't like them.
Yeah, can you cook me something else?
Great.
They were probably closest to him on the table.
Yeah.
And that's all he could reach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
I'm probably more likely to say what should come out of the curriculum than what would go.
Yeah, go for that.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Oh no. Oh. I think not. No, it's not about reducing any subjects down. I think it's the amount that's in there is just unmanageable, and it doesn't give teachers time. But I absolutely agree with you, Jess. Cooking is not in the primary school curriculum, and it's absolutely the right time to be doing it, because there's so much learning, and lots of schools, I am absolutely sure, find every opportunity to bake and cook, but some don't. And I think it's so important for, wanting to be able to feed yourself, knowing how cooking works, having creative ideas around baking. So
I think for neurodivergent
definitely.
children as well, it really helps with almost removing that anxiety around food to an extent. I know it really helps my little boy because he has a lot of anxiety around food, and understanding what's going into it and being part of making it and being proud of something you've made really helps him. And I think involving that in school would probably be really beneficial for neurodivergent children in breaking down those barriers a little bit with food.
Absolutely. And also learning the nutrition.
Yeah.
Because there's so much pressure from society to eat bad stuff, as we're now learning with ultra processed foods and stuff like that. And if we're going to try and protect their physical and mental health moving forward, the first thing we can do is help them to understand nutrition. So there's that, yes, getting them involved in buying the products. My kids love it. They go around the supermarket and they try and find food that's not ultra processed. And it makes them realize how difficult it is to have a really good diet. Because we're like anti-cereal in our house, because we can't find a cereal that isn't ultra processed. And for ages, the kids were nagging at me, and I was like, you go and have a look. There's your challenge. I'm going to sit in this aisle for 20 minutes. Find me a cereal that isn't ultra processed. But I tell you, just a little tidbit there on that subject. Over Christmas, I sat my kids down to watch the Christmas lectures from the Royal Institute with Dr. Chris Van Teleken. And it's applicable for, I mean, my children the ones who watched it are 10 and 13, but I think it would actually help children younger than that as well. And it was all based around the science, but they do it in such a visual way. So one of them swallows a camera in front of all the children, and they get to see how the food goes down his throat. It's fantastic. The kids were like, wow, watching on the screen as they could see how he swallows. But with kids who are really interested in science, this is such a good way to get that learning in. But it was really like he was spraying them with stuff. They were tasting stuff. They were making stuff. It was such a fantastic experience for those children who were in the audience. But you can watch it on the iPlayer. I'm not on commission or anything. Anyway, I've digressed again. Shock horror. Lindsay, what would you add then to the curriculum? If there was no time constraints, what would you add?
Probably more opportunities to work practically. I think the curriculum has got to a stage where it's delivered by PowerPoint to children sitting passively in classrooms. And I think, if time was no object and teachers had time to prepare properly, they would always choose to deliver something in a practical way, because children learn by doing, not by sitting watching a PowerPoint and listening to a teacher all the time. So I would want to see more of that come back into education.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that practical approach, outdoorsy approach, they've all got space outside. It's just making good use of it, isn't it? So, well, we've certainly put the worlds to rights today with all of this, ladies. I've quite enjoyed it. Thank you very much for taking part in episode 1 of our second series of Sip of Sunshine. I'm sure I'll see you again in another episode, or in real person. I'm sure that will happen as well. But until next time, we'll say goodbye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of A Sip of Sunshine. We really enjoyed exploring the return to school from a parent's perspective, a teacher's perspective, and a child's perspective as well. We hope you enjoyed. If you'd like to learn more about anything related to SEND, please do sign up to our Sunshine Academy, where we have hundreds of courses and quizzes and a community welcoming you. Waiting to welcome you.